What happens if you spend just 30 minutes in silence every day for 7 days? No phone, no music, no people. I tested this on myself, and by the 5th day, something happened that I absolutely did not expect. Today, you'll learn why silence can be more powerful than meditation, how the brain actually restructures itself without external stimuli, and what unexpected effect I recorded on the 7th day, backed by scientific studies from leading researchers in human psychology and social network research. I would like to start with a question. Why are we afraid to be alone with ourselves? At first glance, it seems to us that we are comfortable being alone. But after a while, our brain starts looking for ways to occupy itself. People are so unaccustomed to bare thinking that in classic experiments, some participants preferred to give themselves a mild electric shock rather than sit quietly with their thoughts for 6 to 15 minutes. This experiment was conducted by American psychologist Timothy Wilson in 2014. Scientists in the field of digital studies have recently concluded that constant multimedia stimulation raises the basic threshold of engagement and reduces the sense of meaning. From 2009 to 2020, there was a troubling rise in boredom among young people, as shown by nationwide surveys and meta-analyses. The mere presence of a smartphone nearby can consume cognitive resources, the brain drain effect. Although this doesn't occur in everyone, it's important to test this effect on yourself. On my first day of the experiment, my hand literally reached for the phone already in the 2nd minute. After a brief search, I found a life hack: simply removing the phone from the room or putting it in a backpack. This really boosted my focus. Here is beginning of my experiment, my 1st and 2nd day, withdrawal and how to overcome it. There's a myth: silence means instant calm. At the start, it's often the opposite: irritation, an itch of attention. When external stimuli are few, the default mode network, DMN, activates. It's responsible for binding experience, self-reflection, and part of the creative process. A 2023 review and new studies in 2024 and 2025 confirm the role of the DMN in creative thinking and mind-wandering. On my first day of the experiment, all I did was literally count the minutes. But already on the 2nd day, I noticed the irritation fading and the first connected thoughts starting to appear. The practice 4-7-8 breathing really helps. To begin, simply inhale air for 4 seconds, then hold it for 7 seconds. At the end, exhale for 8. After the session, 2 minutes of journaling. This practice will reduce your inner noise. I assure you, if you sit in silence for some time, you'll see for yourself how positively it will affect you, and you'll realize that this is how our state is meant to be. Day 3. An interesting fact proven by scientists: ideas come in silence. What is silence? Is it emptiness or a space for ideas? Mind wandering in the incubation phase can enhance creative outcomes. Recent studies clarify that what matters is not just distraction, but a form of freely moving wandering, where thoughts flow without rigid concentration. Researchers also emphasize that the context of the task, its complexity, relevance, and personal significance determines whether such wandering will lead to an unexpected insight or remain mere distraction. When you work hard on a task, it's like watering a single plant and waiting for it to grow. But growth doesn't happen while you're watching. It happens when you leave the garden alone. While you're busy with something simple and routine, roots begin to intertwine, seeds shift, and new sprouts emerge. Thoughts wander freely through the garden, connecting different ideas like bees carrying pollen between flowers. And when you return to the task, you find that a new, unexpected flower has bloomed, an original idea. Even walking on a treadmill or in your backyard increases divergent thinking. The effect lasts even after the walk. On the third day, when I consistently walked in the park in silence without headphones or a phone, I had an insight about a project I had been postponing for months. The best option is to spend part of the time sitting in silence and part of the time walking slowly without headphones. This combines silence with legs for ideas. On the third day of my experiment, I already had my first insight, but my real discovery came later. In a minute, I'll show you exactly what changed by the end of the week. On the 5th day of my experiment, I already noticed how much the internal noise had decreased. Many people think that if I don't scroll through my feed on social media, it means I'm relaxing. But in reality, my brain is still excited by the aftertaste of stimulation and the rush of dopamine. The default mode network is not laziness, but background processing. It helps to restructure experiences, which is subjectively perceived as, my mind has become quieter. There is data from animal studies. For example, in experiments with mice, periods of silence correlated with increased proliferation, the process of tissue or organ growth through the formation of new cells. That is, cell reproduction through the division of neuron precursors in the hippocampus. Imagine that the brain is a garden, and the hippocampus is a bed where new seeds of memory and ideas sprout. When it is noisy around, the gardener is constantly running around, distracted, and the seeds hardly take root. But during periods of silence, the earth seems to become softer and more fertile. At this time, new sprouts, the precursors of neurons, begin to actively sprout in the garden bed. This has been demonstrated in mice. It was during periods of silence that more new cells were planted in the hippocampus. If we extrapolate this to humans, silence can be like fertilizer for the inner garden of the brain. It helps new seeds of thought to emerge and strengthens memory. For example, on the 5th day of my experiment, the compulsive urge to reach for my phone disappeared. I had fewer thoughts, but they became clearer. Life hack: create a ritual for entering a session of silence. For example, 5 minutes before the session, drink a glass of water, tidy up your desk, and write a note saying, "What do I want to think about?" But the strangest effect happened to me on the final day of my experiment. And it could change your attitude towards silence forever. The Meta, Facebook, emphasized in its recent research that active online communication is associated with better well-being, while passive scrolling is associated with the opposite, which is why meaningful interactions were emphasized in the feed. Imagine that social media is a park with playgrounds and benches. Active use is like playing on the playground. You interact, build, talk. It's exciting and uplifting, but sometimes it can lead to fatigue and anxiety. Passive use is like sitting on a bench and watching people pass by. You get information and a sense of presence, but it can be boring and depressing if you are not involved and on your own. Life hack: 30 minutes of silence per day. This is counterbalance to passive scrolling. Remove the threshold of excitement. Regain control of your attention. So what happened on the 7th day of my experiment? Silence is not the absence of sound, but a space where you can finally hear yourself. And that's scary. Honest questions arise about work, relationships, and postponed decisions. But that's exactly the point. In experiments, people sometimes preferred a mild shock to not feeling anything at all. Not me. I took a pen and wrote down 3 decisions that I had been putting off for months. What I learned during my 7-day experiment: even 30 minutes of silence a day is like a workout for your mind. It reduces noise, restores focus, improves creative incubation, and helps you make decisions. Try it for 7 days and see for yourself how your ideas change and how your sleep changes. Finally, I would like to ask the main question of this video. 90% of people won't even last 10 minutes. Are you one of them? Thank you for watching. If you like this video, subscribe to the channel and give it a thumbs up.